Now it is my real pleasure to introduce Dr. Zarni, who is a research fellow at the Documentation Center Cambodia, the Documentation Center of Cambodian Genocide. He's also a co-founder of 4C, a progressive activist and intellectual platform for Southeast Asian activists. He's the Burmese coordinator for the Free Rohingya Coalition. He has 30 years of engagement in activism, scholarship, politics, and media. He was a co-founder of the Free Burma Coalition back in 1995. As Verita already mentioned, he's also an advisor to Genocide Watch. He's the author of numerous articles and books focusing on the history and the present of Myanmar, his country, especially the Rohingya genocide. He was educated at Mandalay University, as well as the University of California, and he received his PhD from the University of Wisconsin. And I would like to add that I personally met Dr. Zarni for the first time in South Korea in 2019, when he organized a conference about the Rohingya genocide at the local Catholic university. And the next day, he led a protest demonstration in front of the Myanmar embassy. And I think this is quite characteristic for Zarni, because he's one of those outstanding intellectuals who combine high-level scholarship with a passion for activism, for justice and solidarity. And I think it is also appropriate to mention that his travels repeatedly brought him to Poland, and especially to the site of the former Nazi extermination camp at Auschwitz. And not accidentally, his talk today is under the title From Auschwitz to Myanmar. Now it is already the fourth day of the symposium, and because of time constraints, we have not planned for Q&A, but I wanted to say that all the comments from the chat will be taken into account, they will be collected and used towards the final report and the final publication of the symposium. So, Dr. Zarni, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good evening to all of you, if you're in Southeast Asia. And I also want to thank Professor Rafal, Pankowski, and Natalia, as well as the organizers from the two universities in Cambodia and Thailand. It is not simply a pleasure, but it is a great honor for me as a Southeast Asian and a Burmese to be asked to share my thoughts. Just to make sure I don't overstay my invitation, I have 15 minutes. Am I correct, Professor Pankowski?
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. No, I've got this the timer here. I listened to Thai the scholars and artists and NGO executives about Patani, and also 6 October 1976 memorialization project. And I have been a really close friend with Ajahn Tong Chai, who was a young professor. He just arrived in Madison, Wisconsin when I started my PhD, and so we bonded. And I have followed the activist movements in Thailand since the early 1990s, and so it's really heartwarming to see that the new generation of Thai scholars and activists that try to honor and memorialize the victims of October 6th. And also I took a keen interest in what happened or what has been going on in southern Thailand, Patani region. So thank you to J. Abdullah. I don't have a prepared remarks. I've sketched several key points I want to share with you. One is that I want to return to the crucial question: what is genocide? Because we need to know, what is considered genocide legally, and what in fact and in practice is genocide as experienced by the victims, those who perished and also who survived these extremely, anti-human, processes and practices. The first thing is we need to move away from the legal narrow definition of genocides, because the Genocide Convention that was adopted by the United Nations after the war, 3 years after the Second World War ended, on 27th of January 1945, the Soviet Red Army defeated the Nazis in Poland that was occupied by the Nazis, and in quotes, it liberated the Auschwitz-Birkenau, the death camp where 1 million, mostly Jewish and also like Roma, or in the old racist term, gypsies, as well as Poles and Soviet POWs were systematically murdered. So almost 3 years after the closure of Auschwitz, the United Nations adopted, the original founders and the fresh members adopted what later came to be known as Genocide Convention, the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. That is the full official title, but it's known as Genocide Convention, on the December 9, 1948. Yeah. And the most people would know that on December 10, that is the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Yeah. So Genocide Convention was adopted one day prior to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was adopted. And also December 10 is the day that the Nobel Committee in Oslo has chosen to hold its Nobel Prize award ceremony. So these are important dates. But if the title, like From Auschwitz to Myanmar, I want to take a step back and this show why it is important not to be wedded to the idea of genocide as defined by the Genocide Convention, because if you return to, as Rafal and other the scholars in this symposium would know, the Raphael Lemkin's idea, that this is the Polish Jewish lawyer and legal activist, to whom we owe a great debt for having the terminology genocide as well as the Genocide Convention. For him, the identity-based, state mobilized attempt to systematically destroy. The key word is destroy, intentional destruction, not just simply kill. So that this is very important, because the popular misconception is that for a mass killing, mass destruction of groups, whether ethnic or racial or religious or national groups. Yet Lemkin's idea was identity-based group destruction. Yeah, it doesn't have to be just a national, ethnic, or religious. It could be political identities. Right? It could be communist. It could be progressive. It could be LGBT people. Right? So that's why it's really important to not allow ourselves to be stuck on the legal, narrow, technical definition, because that is one of the major barriers in getting the people's attention and the state's attention to get them to do something concrete, effective to prevent and to punish the genocide. So if you return to, if you are legalistic and stick with the Genocide Convention, the Genocide Convention is not about ICC or International Court of Justice, that address the issues of state behavior, not individual behavior. There is an international court of a criminal court and international court of justice in the same the Netherlands, the city, The Hague, and so even if you stick with the Genocide Convention of 1948, which has about 150 the signatory states, right? State parties, as this is called. The convention isn't about simply holding perpetrators and perpetrating regimes accountable. It is also about prevention. That is why the title itself is the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide. So I think, so as activists, not only should we push for ending international impunity, the cultural impunity that other speakers that this morning talk about, but we also need to resort to normal mainstream schooling, as well as aggressive anti-racist and pro-tolerance opinion mobilization. It's not enough to just resort to a few genocide awareness courses. The genocide awareness and anti-racism curricula have to be incorporated into essentially every national curriculum if we are to end these heinous crimes. And so the second part about the genocide is genocides are often mobilized by the most powerful political organizations. We know that the most powerful economic organizations are corporations, right? And the most powerful political organizations are what we call states, or the massive bureaucratic monsters. So they have the power to mobilize public opinion, to shape the public opinion in a particular direction. But that's why genocide is often seen as a state crime, a crime committed by the states. But here I will go further. Genocides are state crimes committed with the popular backing of the mainstream society, be it Germany or in the 1965 genocides. There are two genocides as far as many sociologists of genocide are concerned that the Suharto regime committed. One was the genocide against the group with the political identity, the communists, the Indonesian communists, and the other is the Indonesian-born the Chinese community in Indonesia that was never recognized. And neither of these crimes of genocide has been processed or memorialized by either Indonesian state or the Indonesian society at large. So these are crimes where states and society collaborated, at different stages. So this is where the notion of civil society needs to be treated with a degree of suspicion, because in every single genocide, civil society is involved. So that should prick our conscience, especially that should trouble us as activists and scholars who see civil society as a moral counterpoint to the immoral and criminal state behavior. So that's why we are now looking at the region, the Southeast Asia, like 10 member states of ASEAN plus Timor-Leste. That's not admitted as a member state of ASEAN yet. Out of this 10 country, the regional bloc, and plus Timor-Leste, we have atrocity crimes committed in about half the country. Yeah, and Cambodia is the most obvious one, and of course the next contender is Rohingya genocide by my own, a country that likes to be known as Buddhist, yeah, by the military and Aung San Suu Kyi's National League for Democracy. So I'm not going to, give Aung San Suu Kyi or the National League for Democracy, anti-military party, a moral pass because they happen to be victims of military persecution, right? And then you've got Indonesia in 1965, and then you've got a massive, state mobilized the violence by dominant Malay community against the minority Chinese, right? And then you've got Mindanao, which is the identity-based conflict with the Catholic majority Philippines, and then you've got southern Thailand, Patani, where the Muslim Malay minority has been subject to decades of predominantly Buddhist Thai kingdom and its military and its state. So this is really shocking because we have about 500 million inhabitants in the region and multi-civilizational, and half of them have been implicated or somehow contributed to genocidal crimes against their own fellow countrymen and women. And then the other point about genocides, that genocides are about every one of us, because genocides are considered a crime against humanity, a crime against all human communities and whole human persons. So we must not step back and say, well, this is happening to Muslims in Thailand or Rohingyas in Burma or in Chinese in Indonesia or Malaysia or communists in the Philippines. It concerns all of us, right? And so I think that's the other one is, yesterday, in the United States, a lot of the people celebrated Thanksgiving, the last Thursday of November, and the Genocide Watch issued a tweet that has not gotten much attention. Talk about Thanksgiving as an occasion to educate Americans about what the serial genocides that the original Americans or Native Americans suffer at the hands of white settler colonialists. So this is interesting. A few years ago, Angela Davis, Professor Angela Davis, the Black iconic revolutionary feminist and intellectual, noticed something that has stuck in my head. The phenomena of formerly persecuted communities and individuals turning perpetrators themselves, persecutors, right? So the white settler colonialists that fled persecution in England in the 15th century, known as Puritans, right? They arrived in a place in Massachusetts, which they named Plymouth because they left United Kingdom from the port called Plymouth. Yeah, and so they named the port they arrived in what later became the United States Plymouth. Yeah, and so this was 1492. So there's another aspect to the genocide, that is genocides that were committed before 1948. In other words, genocides that were not declared legal crimes in international or national laws, because the term itself was not coined until early 1930s by Raphael Lemkin and did not become law or part of international law until 1948. So genocides have been going on for centuries. And I would not say that it's part of a human DNA to be violent, to be hateful, to be racist, to be intolerant. We are all taught to love certain group of people, certain types of humans, and hate other types of human. And so I think, I think we should acknowledge that these crimes cannot be committed by the states, the prime mobilizers of racism, anti-LGBT sentiments, intolerance, and populist right-wing murderous ideologies, without the society allowing themselves to be influenced by racist and other devastating ideological mobilization by the state. Finally, I want to say something about international or interstate system. Yeah. And a few years ago, I had a conversation with the current foreign minister of Malaysia, and I asked him, why do you want to get active on the Rohingya issues? In other words, are you politically motivated? Yeah. And he said, no, we failed as an ASEAN, original 5-member ASEAN countries failed when the Khmer Rouge, the communist regime, was committing genocide against its own Khmer and Vietnamese and Cham Muslim minorities. So we are failing again when Myanmar, now a member state since 1997, is committing a genocide against Rohingya people. And so I think the impunity, domestic impunity, is not a question, because the state that has to administer criminal justice system, make sure that genocidal crimes does not get perpetrated within its territories. When that state becomes a perpetrator itself, the question of domestic impunity, does not arise, because the state itself has morphed into a criminal perpetrator. So the question is, why do 150 signatory states or state parties to the Genocide Convention allow this kind of crime to recur? Yeah, despite the slogan, never again will we allow, will the United Nations of this earth allow the repeat of the Holocaust, of the Nazi genocide. Yeah. So I think when genocides happen anywhere in the world, the fact that genocides happen is actually the loudest, clearest indictment of the United Nations system, particularly the Security Council, that has the ultimate authority by the 5 veto wielders to intervene politically, diplomatically, and militarily to end any type of genocidal atrocity to recur. But when when we live in the world's order, where the most powerful veto wielders, United States, Russia, and China, when they themselves display criminal behaviors through war crimes, Uyghur genocide, the disrespect and disregard for international law, the rejection of the International Criminal Court. So when these most powerful state actors that dictate or influence international affairs themselves disregard international law, of course, the international impunity continues on. And so we've got these genocidal regimes that enjoy both domestic/national impunity and the international impunity arising from the impotence of the Security Council. So finally, what does that leave us, small individuals, scholars, activists, artists, the musicians who may be concerned about, fellow humans being decimated intentionally? Well, that is why symposium like this one, that is why, the activism, that is why speaking out against your own society, speaking out against any community, group, network that is about to commit different international crimes against vulnerable communities, whoever they are and whatever they are. So because the interstate system has failed categorically since Genocide Convention was adopted in 1948, we are here today from Auschwitz, January 1945 to now, 26 November 2021. We are looking at unfinished and ongoing genocide of Rohingyas in Burma. We are looking at the unfolding genocide of Uyghur people in China. We are looking at Tigray region and Ethiopia. So I'm going to stop here, but we must band together as fellow humans to fight tooth and nail against crimes against humanity, crimes that attack all of us.
Thank you very much indeed for your very powerful and inspiring speech. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Now, our program is slowly coming to an end. Of course, we have not exhausted all the aspects of the big subject of Holocaust and genocide, denial and distortion. I suppose one of the important fields that needs to be addressed in this context would be the spread of Holocaust denial and distortion online. And I just wanted to mention another project in which the Never Again Association is involved, Get the Trolls Out, which aims to address the issue of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, as well as other forms of hatred in the online spaces. But anyway, I believe we have covered quite a lot of topics over the last 4 days. And now I would like to invite two of our colleagues, friends from Germany and from Russia to share some reflections on the basis of our discussions during this symposium. So Alina Scheitza from the Bundeswehr University in Munich and Alena Fomenko from the Jewish Museum and Tolerance Center in Moscow. The floor is yours, please.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me, and I feel really honored to speak today, to be allowed to speak today. I will just I just have a short report of what was important for me in the last 4 days. So during the last 4 days, we could listen to many interesting lectures about the Holocaust, mainly with a focus on Southeast Asia. If I had to reduce the lectures, I followed to 2 words. It would be the words why and how. 2 questions about the reasons and methods. Why was Shoah possible and how was Shoah possible? Guests from different countries and with different backgrounds searched together for origins and methods of Shoah and other genocides. This search for causes, mechanism, and methods should enable us to understand the genocide in the past and to prevent it in the present and future. Dr. Kunaya Wimoktanon, I hope I pronounced it correctly, pointed out that the feeling of never again, the feeling that Shoah will never be repeated because we are wiser now, can be exactly their feeling that makes new genocides possible. So how should we proceed to make the words never again true? For me, two groups of arguments stood out. One group had to do with how we deal with our own history and history in general, and the second, how we deal with the narratives and ideologies of the present. These two groups are inseparable. History is reflected in discourses and ideologies, and the present ideologies and discourses often reshape or distort history. Professor Van Dijk showed us in his lecture quite clearly how discourses can be used for propagation of, for example, xenophobia or anti-Semitism or Holocaust denial. However, through critical analysis of discourses, scholars can produce knowledge to seek and act against them. It is important to analyze the socio-cognitive aspects of discourses. In analyzing discourses, it is also very important to remember that the context of these discourses are never objective. We must always remember who said something to whom, when, and where. Who is producing the discourse, who is producing the knowledge, and what are their goals. It is also of great importance who criticizes the discourses or who is excluded from the discourses. Thus, we will come to the question of how we can contribute through the critical discourses analysis to the solution of the still significant problems of the present. The answer is by looking critically and at the discourses on these problems and searching for the sources and producers of these discourses, even if these are to be found in the past. Discourses circulate. They are often passed down through family, schools, friends. Therefore, the key to understanding them often lies in the past. The mechanism, how the past of the country shapes the discourses of the counterpart and then contributes to the development of new discourses, was discussed in the lecture of Rabbi Michael Schudrich and Dr. Verita Sriratana. I'm sorry. Although those two lectures were about two different countries and different history, we could see that the lack of critical engagement with one's history is reflected in the discourses of the present. Rabbi Michael Schudrich spoke about the complicated relationship of Poland to the Shoah. He called this condition not Holocaust distortion or denial, but Holocaust limitation. In Poland, you can hardly find people who deny the Shoah, but it is difficult for Poles to deal with the fact that among them were not only victims and heroes, but also perpetrators. Rabbi Michael Schudrich pointed out that this refusal to deal with one's own history unfortunately makes it impossible for the society to look forward and to move beyond. Dr. Verita Sriratana spoke about the handling of National Socialism and Communism in Thailand. In her presentation, she showed, probably for most people who grew up in Europe, disturbing pictures of places in Thailand where Hitler or Stalin and the associated symbolism of those totalitarian systems have been commercialized and largely separated from their historical significance and their crimes. This, at the first glance, ignorant approach to history has its roots in the history of Thailand, but also other countries in Southeast Asia. This history did not make the Shoah possible, but it makes distortion and trivializing possible. The atrocities of Hitler and Stalin play, because of this particular cultural background, smaller role than the charisma as strong leaders. This cult of personality, a kind of fascination with a military and a strong male leaders, is visible in the contemporary pop culture in Thailand. National socialism is not a part of a Southeast Asia past, but in a sense, it shapes its present. An example that this kind of thinking can lead to a further genocide is the displacement and genocide of the Rohingya in Myanmar. It is the genocide that Dr. Ronan Lee is concerned with. He analyzed in his presentation the techniques of distortion and denial and made the genocide of Rohingya possible. It was mainly a kind of manipulation of one's own history that made it possible to first make Rohingya strangers in their own country, then dehumanize them, and finally made the displacement and genocide possible. These are the same techniques that paved the way for Shoah in Europe in the last century. The power of dehumanization and exclusion was also pointed out by Rabbi Michael Schudrich, who warned that we should be sensitive to it in our observation and research. In doing so, in order to prevent future genocides, we must focus not only on the analysis of history and the present, but also on the power of the knowledge we pass on or fail to pass on through education. Education and critical dealing with discourses seems to be reliable tools that science can use to counteract distortion and denial of Shoah and to prevent further genocides. Thank you.
Thank you, Alina. I'm honored to underline this great event. Of course, I will repeat some ideas, but that's the idea of underlining. The topic of the symposium, the identifying and countering Holocaust distortion, lessons for and from Southeast Asia, actually opened a large scope for discussion about genocides, distortion of historical memory, and difficult lessons of the past for everyone. Southeast Asia is an extremely interesting region in this context with its growing diverse population, its own experience of the Second World War that is totally different from that of the Western world, and with its own difficult context on genocide and mass violence. Speaking about the lessons learned from the Holocaust studies for this region, we should keep in mind that most knowledge about the Shoah in Asia mostly comes from the embassies of Eastern and Central Europe countries, which are organizing exhibitions or lectures presenting positive aspects, but not the whole complexity of these events. This raises the question, which appeared in many discussions of the symposium, of how educating about the Holocaust can help Asia in dealing with its own problematic stories. So why to study Holocaust? Konstantin Gebert quite rightly said that we need to study the Holocaust and compare it to the other genocides if we really want to learn any lessons. The exoticization of any story or event makes any lessons drawn useless for the other plots. However, in order to understand how to prevent future horrors, we need to compare one horror to another. In brilliant lecture of Professor Tom van Dijk, he provides another important answer to the same question. The method of discourse analysis shows us that in order to recognize and understand denying discourse, we should study other denying discourses. It's not a secret that the Holocaust is not only one of the world tragedies of the 20th century. This genocide is a unique example of a worldwide known tragedy. Even in such countries as Myanmar, where people know very little about what exactly happened to Jews in Europe during the Second World War, as pointed out by Mr. Sammy Samuels, the Memorial Day for the Holocaust victims is a visible event. And this wide visibility of the Holocaust, of course, has triggered a wide spectrum of all possible reactions, including all kinds of denying and distortion of discourses. Studying how these discourses are generated and how they are spreading can teach us lessons about similar discourses about the other genocides and violence. A large spectrum of political reactions to the Holocaust and generally in anti-Semitism, as some of our speakers also suggested, in different countries, which have different political situations over decades, provide a wealth of researcher material. However, what really matters in that results of decades of academical work should not only feed scientific curiosity, but allow for an in-depth study of our genocides. As mentioned by Dr. Teresa Dolangis at the Wednesday session, historical memory of the genocide has its life cycle. Understanding the mechanism of this cycle is not only helpful when it comes to recognizing the situation of any given event or story in collective memory. Like in medicine, it would be just a diagnosis. In turn, the diagnosis could help us to heal the traumatic memory. In line with all the other speakers, one of our amazing moderators, Mrs. Wiesel Soren, said that it's important that we keep talking about genocides. Nonetheless, the problem of traumatic memory is sadly also too well known. When the trauma is too strong, people don't want to speak about it, don't want to tell. It happens for many reasons. They don't want to forget, but they cannot speak because they want to protect the younger generations. They want to forget because they are too hurt. They can even be afraid or ashamed. And Mr. Sophia Chi, I'm sorry, also problems with pronouncing names, who presented the Bophana Audiovisual Resource Center in Cambodia, also told us about this problem in relation with intergenerational dialogue. But what can be the solution? I believe that deep study of the mechanism of traumatic historical memory can give us some clues. One other important point that I noticed during these fruitful discussions over the week is that many of our speakers who presented the situation in their regions told us about the distortion of memory, yielding very different pictures at this glance. Dr. Robert Williams gave us some Western perspective of the problem. Distortion caused by political reasons like victim blaming, manipulation, honoring persons who were eventually involved into crimes, half-truths, and fact distortion. In this case, we also got idea that studying this context of the speech, who is speaking when and for what purpose, with a little luck and analysis, we can help we can find benefits from the distortion. But on the other side, our speakers from Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar, Bangladesh gave us examples that are not that valid for the USA and Europe. The history of the Shoah doesn't have such a strong political dimension when it comes to Southeast Asia. Romanticizing Nazi chic, communist cool style, Hitler cult, or simply wearing clothes with Nazi symbols without knowing what they can actually mean clearly indicate the very limited scope for politicization of the phenomenon. This clearly hints at education to avoid distortion, trivialization, and banalization, as pointed at many times during this week. Through educating about history, we necessarily come to such topics as justice, human rights, and causes of tragedies and violence. During the yesterday's session, one of the questions posed to the participants triggered some reflection about what the future of genocide studies might be. What could we really do, even we already know the reasons for distortion, for the politicization, romanticization of tragic moments in history? If we know the names, benefits, and instruments, and symbolic elites, if we also know who are the victims and perpetrators, what should be our next step? Can museums, memorials be a reasonable part of taking action against the tragedies? Can we really prevent future catastrophes? My personal answer made after these sessions is yes. We can not only decide for ourselves that a tragedy shouldn't repeat itself. Knowledge, imagination, compassion should open up future events. I've heard so many wise, priceless ideas during the symposium, and they give me hope in spite of all the tragedies that humanity has been through and still living through. There are very old yet valid truths. Professor Yehuda Bauer noticed that there can be only one line of action: you shall not kill. Everybody knows that in their heart, from history, research, analysis, we know that genocides are still possible, but we also know that genocides are never rooted by emotions. Emotions are not the root of manipulations leading to the denying and distorting theories. The notion of inadmissibility, illegality of violence exists in every culture, every region, every moral code, every religion. And what we need to do is to call for this idea and this feeling in everyone, every community and society. And yes, I really believe that every small step we can afford, every memorial initiative, lesson, guiding tour, film, book, piece of art, it's a step against the ignorance. I really love the story told by Konstantin Gebert about the memorial which opened its gates to become a shelter for the refugees at night. And I believe that this is a perfect example when it comes to the question, what's next? The session also provided us a lot of valuable pieces of advice, and I tried to write some of them down just to finish what we are speaking about. So we need to study history, analyze different discourses, dominantal, opponental, in order to understand where the distortion comes from. We need to educate people about history at all levels. We need to protect knowledge from manipulation, half-truths and politicization. We must be informed and ready to be involved into action against distortion of memory. We need to keep an international and intergenerational dialogue. We need to avoid banalization, exoticization, and trivialization of genocides. And I will repeat after all of other speakers, we should keep talking and reflecting on the hard topics of our history. And after today's session, I will add that we should keep ask questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alina. Thank you very much, Alena, for these very interesting, thoughtful remarks. Now we have truly come to an end of this symposium, but it is not the end of our cooperation, of course. It is not the end of the project on identifying and countering Holocaust denial and distortion lessons for and from Southeast Asia. The next stages will include publications as well as an online exhibition. Please watch out for more news. We have a broad network of colleagues and friends, experts and activists in Asia, in Europe and elsewhere. We certainly intend to continue our communication and cooperation. We look forward to staying in touch with all of you. Please stay in contact by email and by the social media profiles of the Never Again Association. You are also welcome to watch recordings of previous discussions on the website of the Never Again Association. On this note, I would like to thank once again all the speakers and moderators, as well as participants of the symposium. I would like to thank the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. I would like to thank Heinrich Boell Stiftung Cambodia, the Balac Program at Chulalongkorn University, and the American University of Phnom Penh. I want to thank our Khmer and Thai interpreters. I want to thank members of our technical support team in Poland and in Moldova. And last but not least, I also wanted to thank Natalia and all the colleagues and volunteers from the Never Again Association who worked so hard during the symposium. Let's stay in contact. Thank you very much and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you
Bye.
very much, and
Thank you.
let's stay in
Goodbye.
touch.
Thank you.